This is the Confidence Academy podcast, the show for people who are looking to build or reclaim true, unshakable self-confidence to live the life they were always meant to live. I am your host, Lily Badcock, and I'll be sharing my own experiences of awakening to soul purpose and reclaiming lost confidence. So whether you had confidence and lost it, never had it and are ready to find it, or something in between, this is the show for you. Oh, and by the way, F-bombs will be dropped, so pop some headphones in if you're around sensitive ears. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Confidence Academy podcast. This is episode 2 of the brand new series that began last week. And my vision for this whole new series was going to be that I was going to carve out time in the week to get these episodes recorded, and then I was going to get them beautifully uploaded, probably even batch created, to save myself time and stress, and then schedule them out for publishing on a Friday. Well, so far the reality has been not that. And I do think that sometimes we just get to fall into whatever flow we've chosen for ourselves. It would be so easy, well, for a start, it would have been so easy for me to have not done a podcast episode today. This entire week actually has been an utter shit show. Let me know if that has been the same for you. I don't know what is going on in the planet, in my energy. I don't know when I asked for this amount of upheaval. But just to put you guys in the picture, just in the past week, I've had to deal with a very concerning issue with one of my children. It's nothing, it won't be an ongoing concern because we are getting it seen to and dealt with, but it's certainly very worrying and upsetting at the time and highly stressful, even that just on its own. But then Kevin, my husband, was taken into hospital because they thought he had appendicitis. Thankfully, it turned out not to be that. So I feel blessed because everything that's happened this week could have been so much worse, and so I feel lucky that it wasn't. But at the same time, and this is maybe what I'm going to talk about today, it's the toxic act of constantly talking yourself down off a ledge, constantly telling yourself you shouldn't really be stressed or you don't really need to be freaking out because it could have always been so much worse. There's always someone that's worse off than you. You should be grateful. And I think gratitude is something that's talked about a lot in the self-development area, and for sure it's a powerful practice, super powerful, and certainly not one that I'm knocking. However, the downside to it is if you are taught gratitude and you don't fully understand how the practice of gratitude works, you could very easily make the mistake of thinking that every time something happens to you that's confronting, that you're supposed to somehow soothe yourself down and go, it could have been much worse, right? Let's be grateful that it wasn't worse. Let's just be grateful for what is. And I tell you what, that builds up over time. And so that was me, I would say, early on in my self-development journey, around 2015 sort of time, 2013, 14. It was around when I'd had my boys, was when I started diving into self-development. I very quickly latched onto what I now know to be toxic positivity, which is basically the idea that no matter what, you put a smile on your face, you tumble through. And I even celebrated myself for how well I was able to do that. And here's the thing about that. In the beginning, there won't be any sign that that's a bad thing. There won't be any sign that what you're doing is toxic. And actually, worse than that, the signs you'll get or the feeling you'll get will be that actually, yes, it's worked, because you will feel better. When you start to focus on the positives and you stop focusing on the negatives, you will feel better initially. And it will give you that relief, a little bit like someone gets relief when they tug at their hair, right? And
it's just the relief in that moment that's just enough to offset your whole system and soothe you and go, it's okay. Whatever pressure was building up, you've now burst that pressure by causing that sensation, right? It's the same thing as that. But what happens over time are the true emotions that needed to be addressed and released in the moment were not addressed and released in the moment, and instead they were stuffed down because you were too busy going, oh, but I just want to be positive, I just want to be happy, I don't want to deal with this shitty feeling, I don't want to deal with these dark thoughts, I don't want to deal with these memories, yada, 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 I just want to be happy and skip through my life, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's going to come and bite you on the ass because you just can't sustain it, and that's what happened to me, and I think that was really the catalyst of my diagnosis with anxiety, because I had that meltdown while I was driving my car. I felt sick, I went dizzy, I blacked out, and it was a physical reaction to me not having allowed emotions to be processed over a really long period of time. I mean, I would say, how old was I then? I don't even know. I was probably in my early 30s, because that's when I had my kids. So let's say I was in my early 30s. I would say for the best part of those 30 years, I had lived my life like that, because that is what I'd been shown. That was what I'd chosen. I always wanted to be the positive one. I didn't want to be one that wallowed or, was negative or anything like that. And I do remember having a conversation once with my singing teacher, actually, because he noticed every time I went for a singing lesson, which was every 2 weeks at that time, he noticed I would always choose to sing really sad songs. And he commented on it one day, and he said, for someone who's so happy and positive all the time, it's really interesting that you're choosing to sing these very sad, dark, kind of heavy songs. And he said, I think it's how you let your dark side out. And I just laughed at the time, and I was like, well, I don't have a dark side. I don't choose to have a dark side. Well, of course, I do have a dark side. We all do. And a huge part of my journey when I started to unpick this, that was something that kept me in a cycle of conflict for a long time. I would go for hypnotherapy, and I do remember one session actually where she spoke to my so-called dark side, and the opposite side of that, which I was seeing as this bright golden kind of beacon of light. And she did an exercise where you bring the two parts together, because honestly, you need both parts in order to function in a truly balanced way, and balance is everything. And so it was really important for me to embrace that dark side of mine and to really honor what it was trying to tell me and how I was trying to feel. But in that exercise, it was like a Mexican standoff for a long time. The dark side didn't want to go to the golden side, and the golden side didn't want to go to the dark side. And it was literally a standoff. And she said to me afterwards, she did start to wonder if it was even going to work, because it just was going on and on and on. Eventually, I think it was the bright side that moved towards the dark side first, and then we merged them together. And that was my first step towards no longer hiding from that part of myself, no longer shaming myself for the more negative experiences that I was having, the more negative emotions. And so I guess that's what this week's episode needed to be about. It needed to be about allowing yourself to truly feel how you feel, rather than constantly trying to tap into whatever feels better. That's not to say that you can't ultimately choose that, though. That's not to say that you have to stay stuck in a cycle of despair. One exercise that I like to do that helps with this is just to ask myself, what would feel better than this? So I acknowledge how I'm feeling in that moment, and I say, right now, in this moment, this is how I'm feeling, and that's okay. And right now, this is how I feel, and that's okay. And then I say something along the lines of, is that ultimately true, though? Because usually as part of that exercise, I then start saying a load of stuff that makes me feel bad. So then I would question anything I say to myself that makes me feel bad, I will question it and say, is that ultimately true? So if I start to say to myself, oh, the work you do is bullshit, you're not really intuitive, you don't really help people, you're not inspiring, you can't help people with confidence, you're a shit singer, and your bum looks big, right? I will ask myself, is that ultimately true? In the case of does my bum look big, yes, that's ultimately true. Do I give a shit? No, I don't. I like my big ass, and it is what it is. And there are people like the Kardashians that pay a lot of money to have an ass like mine. So I'm actually not mad about it. But with those other things, you know, relative to who I really know I am, asking myself, is that ultimately true, is a really good way to reset myself. Because, of course, your soul always knows. Even when you're having the worst possible day, you do know in the core of yourself what's true. So it's just remembering that you get to tune into that. And then the other thing I like to ask is, what would feel better than this? So if I realize I'm in a cycle of doom and gloom and just noticing everything going wrong, like this week, you know, this is what prompted me to record this episode, because I noticed I started to spiral into these thought patterns of, what the fuck? Like, what was this week all about? And I only gave you a snapshot. There's been so much more. Like, literally, it's becoming a bit of a joke now. Like, when I ring my mum and tell her the next thing that's happened, she's like, what is happening? And I realized I was starting to get into a negative mindset around it. I was then reminded that nothing is ever as it seems. It doesn't need to stay that way. So then I asked myself, how am I, you know, what would feel good to do right now? And I was like, let's just talk about it. In fact, I was guided to record an audio, and then I remembered that I hadn't done my podcast yet today, so I was like, well, bam, I'll do that then. I needed to talk it through. I needed to remind myself of my own process. I needed to remind myself that it's okay to feel like your nose is totally out of joint when you've had a shitty week. And it's absolutely allowed and possible to choose better and to focus on what would be better than this. And certainly for me, in some of the things that have happened this week, it's really just underpinned why I'm building the business I'm building, why I'm doing the work I'm doing, and I've just seen 11:11, so I'll take that as a great sign. It's underpins that. And so in this moment, instead of asking why me, why has it been this hard, why is it so tiring, what I'm going to say is, that is no longer what I want, thank you very much. Not any more of that. And actually, this is why I do what I do. And so rather than give up on what I'm doing, which is what I probably would have done in the past, I'm going to forge forward with it. Hence why you're getting another episode recorded in the car, on the go. There are no rules. Here's the thing, right? I would have told myself somewhere in my brain that it's not professional to record a podcast like this. I'm not using my professional microphone. I don't even have headphones in today. And I'm just sat in my car with the engine running so I don't get cold. And do you know what? That's okay. Because there actually isn't a chalkboard anywhere that says podcasts can't be recorded that way. Sure, there might be people that don't like the podcast if it's not done in a professional way. Well, guess what? My podcast is not for you. If that's how you feel. There will be plenty of people that have spent thousands of pounds on a very nice production and a very great audio sound. Go and give yourself what your soul needs. But if you are like me and you like rough and ready and raw and real, then this podcast was for you, and I dedicate this episode to you. So as always, I would love to know what you got from this episode. I would love to hear your comments. I would love to know how your week went. I want to know if your week was a shit show, but I especially want to know if your week wasn't a shit show, because then you can give me some hope that maybe next week will be better. And I will see you next week. Who knows when that episode will be recorded. But I will, and I hope you will enjoy that when it comes out. Sending lots of love to all of you. Mwah!
Thank you so much for listening to me today, and apologies for the atrocious sound quality. But as I said at the start of that episode, it was recorded on the fly in my car. I didn't even have my headphones in, I don't think. So I thought I would record this little bit for you right now on my spanky gorgeous microphone in my spanky warm lovely office/studio, and I hope that you got the essence of the message, even though the sound quality was less than perfect. That was kind of the point though, right? I just wanted to add this bit on to let you know that my live free challenge, Sing to Heal, has just started. We did the first live training this morning at 11 a.m. It will be continuing for the rest of this week. And you'll also have the weekend to catch up. So if you would like to know how you can use singing as a tool to build confidence, strengthen intuitive guidance, release emotional trauma, and all of the other wonderful benefits that singing can bring for you, like releasing stress and anxiety, etc., then click the link in the show notes, sign up for the challenge. Like I said, it's completely free. And then on Monday, the 24th of January, I will also be hosting a free masterclass. The name of the masterclass is currently the Stage Fright Strategy. That may change because as we go through the week, if it seems as though the people in the challenge need something a bit different, then I may well create something new. But currently the plan is to do that masterclass. And can you see that I'm rebelling against the way that these things are normally done? I just will not plan. I just won't do it. You can't make me, so don't even try. But the challenge is already off the charts. The people in the group are amazing. I would love to have you in there if you haven't already registered. So click the link in the show notes or visit lilybadcock.com and you'll see the link to register is right at the top of that first homepage that you'll land on. Any questions, let me know. But in the meantime, thank you for listening and I'll be back again next week. Lots of love. Thank you for listening to the Confidence Academy podcast. If you love the show and you'd like to keep in touch, why not join my mailing list by visiting lilybadcock.com or clicking the link in the show notes. You'll also be invited to join my Facebook community, Permission to Soar, where you can get weekly energy clearing and intuitive guidance from me. Thank you once again for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode. Big love!